I'm Nick from Mansfield Fine Furniture. Last week I put a blog post about making a shooting board for planing. This past weekend I went to the woodworking shows and I sat in on a seminar by Paul Sellars and saw him quickly build a shooting board that was absurdly simple and quick to make and easy to use, and made me slap my head at the amount of effort I put into making everything just right on that first shooting board. So today I wanted to introduce the concept that he presented and make a miter shooting board using the same principles. Now, this is a real simple project, one that only uses a handful of tools. The materials I'm going to use: recycled pine from a set of old shelves that the people who lived in the house previous to me had put up. Cleaned them up a little bit, took the stain off, made them nice and flat and straight. The entire system is going to be comprised of 3 boards and 3 screws. We're going to start by making the cleat, or the stop. Essentially what this is a wedge, and the taper of the wedge is about 1:7. Now the exact dimensions are not critical at all, just to make it such that it will wedge. So I'm going to do a 1:7, and I'm going to start it off at about 1.25 inches. And what I'd like to do is get 2 wedges out of this length. So here's my 1.25 inches from this corner to here, and then I'm going to measure out 7 inches with a rise of 1, and that's about the width of the gauge. Now I've marked here and here, and I can see at this end that the wedge is going to be a little bit narrow, so I'm going to bump the marks over just a little bit to get an even distance on both points. I'm going to mark it in marker so you can see it a little bit better. Here's my 7-inch line, and here's the first mark and the second mark, and connecting the dots will give you the shape of the wedge. There you go. So there are going to be 2 wedges. Next step is going to be to cut it to length and rip it down the center along the line. Wedges. I'm going to work on this one, set the other aside just in case. Now here's the wedge. I'm going to clamp it up and just plane that top edge smooth. Make a nice clean square. No, I'm not a lefty. Just going to clean up this top surface, flat and square. Next step will be to create my 45-degree cut in here to accept the wedge, like so. To do that, I'm going to start with marking my first 45 line, nice and deep and square. Once you've scribed your 45, you can pencil in the opposite side. Don't cut it just yet, and I'll explain why momentarily. As you pencil the other side, make sure that the wedge is all the way through. Make sure you have lead in your pencil. And that gives you 45 degree here and 45 plus whatever angle the wedge is. One last thing to consider, when you're using the shooting board, the bottom part of the plane is going to ride along the fence, and the blade itself, and part of the blade itself. One key dimension is measuring from the bottom of the plane to someplace along where the blade is. A little bit up on the blade is fine. And I'm just going to score a line. From here you can establish your final depth with the saw. And we're going to start removing some of the waste. I'm staying a little bit away from the pencil line, and I'll show you why that's going to matter in just a second. So once we get some of this material plowed out, oops, no problem. We're going to take our wedge, place it against the freshly cut edge, bring that up to about where we want, and we're going to strike that line with a knife. And then we're going to proceed and do the exact same thing we just did on the other side, taking out a chip until we get enough depth to knock it out with the saw. And that's that. Now we're going to mark the back edge. Let me turn around and show you. Back edge where I drew my depth mark, and plow out everything from there to there. Now you can do it with a chisel, you can do it with a router plane. Any mechanism by which you get this waste out and a nice flat bottom for the wedge to sit on will work. There's part one. Beauty of this is that once we screw it to the to the backboard. Maybe put a cleat on the back. This will yield a nice 45-degree every single time. Now the beauty of this system, you can make this angle any angle you choose. Using the router plane as a marking gauge, we can establish our depth on both edges and chisel out the waste just above that line and then clean it up with the router plane. This is an alternate method to doing it all by eye. Sink a few screws in from behind and you're done. And there you have it. Inexpensive, easy to make, miter shooting board. Extremely accurate. The only thing I might do differently for the next round is to make the wedges a little bit taller so there's a little bit more support for the cut behind it. Other than that, this is a perfectly functional, really easy to make miter shooting board. Make it at any angle, 90 degrees, 45, or whatever you need to make, and it'll give you accurate cuts every time. Thanks for visiting the workshop. See you again soon.